Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive into, well, the heart and soul of India, the Indian Constitution.
Ah, yes, the very foundation of India's democracy.
Exactly. And this one is especially for those of you just starting your UPSC journey.
It's crucial, really, for anyone looking to understand how this nation functions.
Couldn't agree more. But look, even if those exams aren't on your radar, this deep dive is for you.
We're going beyond those dry, dusty facts.
Oh, absolutely. We've got excerpts, stories, the drama behind the making of this incredible document.
It's a living testament to India's hopes and struggles, a belief in its future.
So let's rewind the clock way back to the 1930s.
A time when India writing its own constitution. Radical.
The British Raj was still in control.
Freedom. A distant dream.
But that's where M.N. Roy enters the picture.
In 1934, he proposes a constituent assembly for India.
Bold move, right?
A seed was planted.
And a year later,
The Indian National Congress, the INC, officially demands it.
this assembly, a body to frame the constitution of a free India. I bet the British weren't
It was
thrilled.
a bolt for sure.
But in 1938,
Jawaharlal Nehru made it clear.
no outside interference.
The Constitution of a Free India, framed by Indians for Indians.
Talk about setting the tone.
Elected on the basis of adult franchise.
Wow. India taking charge. But did the British just say, okay, go for it?
World War II happened, lots of political maneuvering.
Oh.
Finally, in 1940, the August offer, they agreed to the idea of a constituent assembly.
Progress. But hurdles remained, I imagine.
Major ones.
Right.
The Muslim League, they wanted separate states,
Yes.
separate constituent assemblies.
Foreshadowing the partition, right?
Absolutely. Complex dynamics at play.
So to navigate this, the British sent the cabinet mission to India in 1946.
They rejected two assemblies, but their proposal kind of satisfied the Muslim League.
Okay. And this laid the groundwork for the Constituent Assembly as we know it.
It did. Imagine a puzzle with 389 pieces.
Okay, I'm visualizing.
296 for British India, 93 for the princely states.
And each piece representing a different part of India.
You got it. Divided among provinces, communities.
An attempt to be inclusive, I assume.
Every community, every corner with a voice.
But how did they choose these representatives? Was it a massive election?
Not direct elections, no. Each province got seats based on population.
Okay, makes sense. So one seat for every, million people?
Roughly, yes. Then divided among religious communities, Muslims, Sikhs, the general population.
Based on proportions within that province. So representation within representation.
Fascinating, isn't it?
But who actually voted?
Well, this was before universal adult franchise in India.
Ah, right.
So the representatives were elected by members of their community within the provincial legislative assemblies.
Hold on. Elected by the members of the assemblies, not directly by the people.
Exactly. It wasn't perfect, but they worked within the limitations.
A multi-layered system. Okay, what about those 93 seats for the princely states?
They were to be nominated by the rulers. They initially stayed away, hesitant to join an independent India.
Drama from the start. So what about the results for those British Indian seats, major players?
The Indian National Congress, they dominated, winning 208 seats.
Wow, a clear majority.
The Muslim League secured 73. The remaining went to smaller groups, independents.
A fascinating mix. Okay, key individuals in this assembly. Any familiar names?
Dr. Rajendra Prasad, later India's first president.
Okay, I know that name.
H.C. Mukherjee, V.T. Krishnamachari.
Remarkable individuals. But wait, there's one name I haven't heard. Mahatma Gandhi.
He wasn't a member.
Right.
He focused on uniting the nation, navigating the path towards independence.
His presence must have been felt, even in absence.
Okay, first meeting, what happened?
December 9th, 1946.
A historic day.
But the Muslim League boycotted, still pushing for Pakistan.
The shadow of partition looming large. How did the meeting proceed?
211 members were present. Dr. Sachidanand Sinha, the oldest, became temporary president.
Yes. Later, they elected Dr. Rajendra Prasad as the permanent president.
Okay. 2 vice presidents as well.
They wanted a smooth process, given the enormity of the task.
Rightly so. But when did they start laying down the core principles, the content of the Constitution?
Just a few days later, December 13th, 1946, Jawaharlal Nehru introduced the Objectives Resolution.
The Objectives Resolution. Every UPSC aspirant knows that name. What's so special about it?
A declaration of intent, a vision for India's future.
A blueprint, guiding principles for the nation they were building.
It was adopted unanimously on January 22, 1947.
Wow, unanimous. What kind of India were they envisioning?
An independent, sovereign republic.
Bold.
A union of states, power flowing from the people.
The essence of democracy.
Social, economic, and political justice for all. Equality of status, opportunity before the law.
Laying the groundwork for a just and equitable society. What about freedom of expression, religion?
Guaranteed. Freedom of thought, expression, belief, faith, worship, vocation, association, and action.
All those fundamental freedoms.
Subject to reasonable restrictions, of course. For public order, morality.
Makes sense. What about minority rights?
Yeah.
A crucial issue, given the partition.
Absolutely. The resolution was clear. Adequate safeguards for minorities, backward tribal areas, depressed and other backward classes.
Protecting everyone, regardless of background.
Yeah.
Fascinating how those aspirations took shape.
Welcome back. Ready for more.
Definitely. This journey is not just history, right?
Right.
It's about understanding the very document that shapes India today.
And tomorrow.
Exactly. And for those of you prepping for the UPSC, this is crucial stuff.
Think of it as your roadmap to navigate those tricky exam questions.
Okay, so massive document, hundreds of articles, schedules, amendments. Where do we even begin?
Well, that's where those committees come in.
Right, the specialized schemes,
Focusing on different aspects of the Constitution.
divide and conquer.
Exactly.
So which committee gets the credit for the core structure? The framework of how India would be governed.
The Union Powers Committee and the Union Constitution Committee.
And who headed these?
Jawaharlal Nehru.
Nehru. Seems like he was everywhere. What did these committees tackle?
Big questions. What powers for the Union government? What for the states?
A balance, I imagine.
A delicate one. How would the branches of government function? The executive, the legislature, the judiciary?
So they laid the groundwork for India's federal structure.
Yes. A strong central government, but empowered states.
Federalism, a key concept for anyone studying Indian polity.
Absolutely. Imagine the discussions, the debates, the negotiations.
Finding that balance must have been a challenge.
They had to consider different regions, languages, cultures.
Unity and autonomy.
Not an easy feat.
So we've got the union, the states, but what about organizing the states themselves? Did they have a say?
Of course. That's where the Provincial Constitution Committee comes in.
Headed by
Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel.
Sardar Patel,
Yeah.
the Iron Man. He was in charge of shaping how individual states would function within the Union. Think about the context, too. The aftermath of partition. New states emerging.
A whirlwind.
And yet they created a system that, for the most part, works. Remarkable.
It is?
Okay, so we have the Union, the states. Now we need the rules, the fundamental law.
Right.
The drafting committee, led by Dr. Ambedkar.
That's right.
The master weavers, bringing it all together.
A Herculean effort. They had to understand India's social and political landscape.
And they did all of this in how many days?
141.
141 days. 7 people creating a blueprint for the world's largest democracy.
Mind-boggling, isn't it?
Okay, so we have this draft constitution. How does it actually become law?
Well, remember, the Constituent Assembly was functioning as India's parliament.
Right.
So this draft went through a rigorous legislative process.
Like any other bill.
Exactly. First, Dr. Ambedkar introduced it on November 4th, 1948.
The first reading.
Yes, for 5 days they had a general discussion. Big picture stuff.
Setting the stage.
Precisely.
And then.
The second reading, November 15th, 1948. This is where the real work began.
Clause by clause, article by article.
Every word, every phrase, debated, voted upon.
And thousands of amendments.
Oh, yes. They debated for nearly a year. Every single clause, article, amendment.
A truly democratic process.
With members from all walks of life.
Shaping the destiny of a nation.
A monumental task.
Okay, so finally, the third reading, the final stage. What happened?
November 14th, 1949, a time for review. Dr. Ambedkar moved a motion.
Passed the Constitution.
As settled by the Assembly.
And on November 26, 1949,
A motion passed.
a historic moment. But did it have those 395 articles and 8 schedules right from the start?
It did. But the preamble, that inspiring introduction, added later.
The preamble was added later. Why?
They wanted it to be perfect, to truly reflect the essence of the Constitution.
The finishing touch.
You could say that, but let's talk about the man behind it all.
Dr. B.R. Ambedkar.
Instrumental. He guided the draft through the Assembly, responded to criticisms, clarified complex concepts.
The father of the Indian Constitution.
Indeed.
He's also been called the modern Manu.
Like the legendary figure who wrote the Manusmriti, you see.
Ah, the ancient legal text.
A new legal framework for India, replacing the old colonial law